The laughter echoed through the gleaming kitchen like sharp knives against glass. "Who let the janitor into the kitchen?" sneered Francois, a tall, angular French sous chef with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and the arrogance to match. He flicked his wrist dramatically, sending a thin stream of truffle oil spiraling onto his plate like a performance. Several chefs around him snickered, their pristine white coats reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights above the stainless steel counters. But the target of their laughter didn't move. He stood quietly at the back of the line, a simple white apron over his dark skin, short dreadlocks tucked under a net, and calm, unreadable eyes fixed on the plated dishes. His name was Elijah Brooks. "Don't mind them," whispered Maria, the pastry chef, as she passed by with a tray of lemon tarts. "They're just scared. They know you can cook." Elijah gave a tiny nod, but his heart thudded louder than the kitchen's clatter. He'd come from a neighborhood where gunshots were more common than applause, from a mother who worked 3 jobs to keep him out of trouble, and, from a father who died before Elijah turned 8. The kitchen was where he had found peace, order, a place where the heat was something he could control. But here, at La Maison de l'Or, the most prestigious restaurant in Manhattan, he was seen as nothing more than a token, a diversity hire, the help. It wasn't supposed to be like this. "You done wiping down counters?" Francois called loudly across the room. "I think there's a toilet that needs scrubbing." The other chefs erupted in cruel laughter again. Elijah clenched his jaw but didn't respond, until executive chef Laurent Roux walked in. Silence. Laurent's thick French accent cut through the noise like a cleaver. The room froze. Laurent was a legend, a Michelin-starred master with icy blue eyes and a reputation for perfection. He had trained in Paris, cooked for presidents, and didn't suffer fools. He glanced at Elijah. "You, Brooks, you still want a shot?" Elijah stepped forward slowly. "Yes, chef." Laurent gestured to a basket of ingredients. "Create a dish, 1 plate. You have 45 minutes. Impress me." The kitchen went silent. Francois scoffed. "What is this? America's next top-line cook?" But no one laughed. Elijah approached the counter. In front of him were a duck, breast, pomegranate seeds, shallots, ginger, fennel, and a medley of roots. His mind started racing, calculating flavors, temperatures, textures. He closed his eyes for just a second, hearing his grandmother's voice. "Don't cook angry, Eli. Cook like you. Love them, even if they hate you." He rolled up his sleeves. 42 minutes later, the plate sat before Chef Laurent. A seared duck breast, glazed in a pomegranate reduction, rested beside a roasted parsnip puree. Crispy fennel slivers towered over the tender meat like golden shards. The aroma was sweet, smoky, and tangy. A painting in flavor. Laurent picked up his fork. Francois leaned in with narrowed eyes, arms crossed. The fork entered the duck breast, moist, perfectly pink in the center. The room held its breath. Laurent chewed, once, twice, then again. He set the fork down. "Who taught you to cook like this?" Elijah's voice was quiet. "My grandma, Georgia Brooks. She ran a soul food diner in Atlanta." Laurent said nothing, just stood, took a cloth, and gently wiped his mouth. Then he walked out. Silence. Francois let out a laugh. Guess he wasn't impressed. Elijah turned, nodding to himself. Maybe this wasn't the place. Maybe it wasn't the time. He grabbed a cloth, ready to clean up when the door swung open again. Laurent was back, but he wasn't alone. A man in a dark navy suit walked behind him. Silver hair, sharp glasses, and an unmistakable presence. James Whitmore. The James Whitmore. The food critic whose words could make or break any restaurant. A-N-E-W. York Times legend. A man who hadn't been seen dining at any establishment in over a year. Mr. Whitmore was nearby, Laurent said, his voice tight. "I insisted he try something before lunch." Elijah stared. The plate was placed in front of Whitmore. Again, silence. Whitmore ate slowly, thoughtfully. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. Then he looked up at Elijah. "What's your name?" "Elijah." Elijah Brooks. You create this? Yes, sir. The old man leaned back, his lips twitching, as if debating something. Finally, he said it. You're a genius. The kitchen exploded. Francois's jaw dropped. Maria gasped. Even Lauren's eyes widened, just slightly. I haven't tasted duck like this in 30 years, Whitmore continued. The balance, the soul, the restraint. This isn't training, this is talent. Elijah stood frozen. Whitmore turned to Laurent. I'm writing a piece. Tonight. If this young man isn't leading your next tasting menu, you're a fool. Then he left. No one said a word for several seconds. Then Francois muttered, This has to be some kind of joke, you. Laurent snapped, pointing at him. Out! Pack your knives! You're done. Francois's face went pale. But chef, now. As Francois stormed out, Elijah blinked. Still rooted in place, Laurent turned to him. Welcome to the real kitchen, Chef Brooks. Elijah could barely breathe. That night, the article broke the internet. A genius in the flames, Elijah Brooks is the future of fine dining. James Whitmore's praise was absolute. By morning, Elijah's phone was flooded. Interview requests, offers from TV shows, Michelin scouts booking tables at La Maison. Social media called him the soul food sorcerer and the duck whisperer. But through it all, Elijah stayed grounded. He remembered the laughter. He remembered wiping counters in silence. He remembered his grandmother's hands teaching him how to peel ginger and balance sweetness with heat. Now, she was gone, but her recipes lived in his blood, and no one would ever laugh again. But the story was far from over. Elijah barely slept that night. The article had gone viral. A culinary genius rises from the back of the kitchen. It read. The comments were a storm of disbelief, admiration, and even some backlash, but one thing was clear. Elijah Brooks had become the most talked about name in food overnight. At dawn, he stood on the rooftop of his Harlem apartment, watching the city stretch awake. The sun painted gold across the skyline, and he clutched his phone, rereading the article again and again, not out of vanity, but disbelief. His grandmother's face kept flashing in his mind, her eyes worn but warm, her voice always calm but fierce with truth. When they laugh, let 'em. Just make sure you're the one cooking when they get hungry. He exhaled and headed downstairs back at La Maison. Elijah stepped into the kitchen to dead silence. Every chef looked at him, not with laughter this time, but with a strange mix of awe, envy, and hesitation. Laurent was already there, arms crossed. You're late, Chef Brooks. Elijah blinked. It's 6:58. I expect you here by 6:30 from now on. Stars don't get to slack. Yes, chef. Laurent gave a faint smirk and tossed him a set of knives. Your station, Francois's old corner. And tonight, we're doing a private table for someone important. I want something new. Something. Yours. Elijah nodded, gripping the knives like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Maria walked over with a grin. Hey, rockstar, you good? Trying to be. You know they're scared of you now, right? He glanced around. The younger chefs were whispering behind pans. A few nodded respectfully, but others, like Stefan, the German grill master, had narrowed eyes and a stiff posture. I didn't come here to scare anyone, Elijah muttered. No, but you came to win. So win. Later that evening, the private table was set in the glass-enclosed chef's room. The VIP guest was a surprise. Elijah wasn't told who until 5 minutes before plating. It was Andre Vance, the billionaire tech mogul who was opening a chain of soul fusion restaurants across the country. And he was looking for a head of culinary development. Elijah's hands trembled as he plated the dish, smoked oxtail ravioli with brown butter sage, collard green puree, and black garlic oil. A reinvention of his grandma's Sunday stew, turned elegant. Andre took one bite, then slowly looked up. Who taught you to cook like this? Elijah's voice cracked. My grandma. She said food is memory. Andre smiled. She taught you right. Laurent, watching nearby, stepped forward. You're looking at the future. But even as Elijah smiled politely, something in Laurent's voice made his stomach tighten. There was an edge, a subtle calculation. And then the next day, the tension exploded in the staff meeting. Laurent announced the new seasonal tasting menu. Chef Brooks will contribute the second course, he said flatly. A murmur rippled through the room. Just one course. Elijah stepped forward. Chef, I thought you said— You thought I said what? Laurent snapped. You said I'd be leading the menu. I said I wanted your dish. You're not ready to lead. The room went quiet. Elijah stared at him. Is this about the critic? Elijah asked, his voice calm. You wanted him to love you, but he loved my plate. Laurent's jaw tightened. Be careful, Chef Brooks. The meeting ended. That night, Elijah stood in the walk-in fridge, breathing hard, heart racing. Maria found him there, fists clenched beside the veal stock. Hey, don't let him get to you. He used me. Maybe. But people know now. James Whitmore is hosting the World Chef Invitational next month. You should enter. Elijah blinked. That's invite only. Maria smirked. Not if you're on the cover of the Times. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived. Whitmore's handwritten invitation, sealed with silver ink. You have 3 weeks to prepare. It read, This is your moment. Elijah showed the letter to Laurent in private. The Frenchman's smile didn't reach his eyes. Compete if you like, but lose, and your fall will be public. I'm not afraid. You should be. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. Elijah trained day and night. He fused childhood flavors with haute cuisine techniques, balancing southern roots with global inspiration. Grits turned into silken corn espuma. Fried catfish became tempura-dusted monkfish. Peach cobbler evolved into a deconstructed parfait with lavender cream. But tension boiled in the kitchen. Stefan, who'd been cold for weeks, finally snapped one night. You don't belong here, he muttered. You skipped the line. I earned it. You got lucky. Maria stepped in. He got noticed. There's a difference. Stefan shoved a tray. I've been cooking 20 years. And now I'm second to some charity case. Elijah stepped forward. Say it again. You heard me. Laurent appeared from behind. Enough. All of you. Chef Brooks, if you can't win the competition, don't bother coming back. Elijah nodded. Fine. I'll win. The World Chef Invitational was hosted in Geneva, a 3-day culinary gauntlet. Dozens of chefs from every continent, each one carrying knives like warriors. The theme was announced, Home. Elijah stared at the word on the board, Home. He closed his eyes and saw his grandma's kitchen, the cracked tile, the smell of cornbread, the Sunday music, the love. He got to work. Round after round, he dazzled. One judge, a Japanese master named Mori, told him, Your food is jazz, improvised, but soulful. On the final night, the top 3 stood on stage, a Frenchman, an Italian, and Elijah Brooks. Each had to create a 3-course meal live, under pressure, in front of cameras and a global jury. Elijah cooked with fire in his soul. First course, sweet potato bisque with charred corn relish. Second course, braised lamb with molasses, juice, and pickled okra. Final course, bourbon pecan tart with smoked sea salt ice cream. When the clock stopped, he stood drenched in sweat. The judges tasted in silence. Then Whitmore stepped forward. He looked Elijah in the eyes. The genius delivers again. The crowd erupted. Elijah Brooks had won. Back in New York, the reception was wild. Talk shows, interviews, magazine covers, a Netflix series offer. But Elijah returned quietly to Harlem, to his grandmother's old diner, long boarded up. He bought the building, he reopened it. Brooks and Roots was born, fine dining soul food, served with honor. Maria became head pastry chef. Even Stefan, eventually humbled, asked to join. And one evening, as Elijah stood in the kitchen, plating a dish for a senator, a soft voice spoke behind him. You cooked all this from memory. He turned. An old woman stood there, wrinkled hands, clear eyes. It was Mrs. Carter, his grandma's best friend. I just came to say, she whispered, Georgia would be proud. Elijah's hands trembled. He looked around. The heat, the knives, the aromas. He smiled, eyes wet. I just hope they're hungry, ma'am. And this time no one laughed, because the genius had found his fire, and the world was finally ready to taste it. The opening months of Brooks and Roots were a storm of demand. Reservations booked out for weeks. The sidewalk buzzed nightly with crowds, news vans, foodies, and celebrities hoping to get a seat. Inside, Elijah moved like a man possessed. Each dish was poetry. Each night, a performance. But even as the restaurant soared, pressure closed in. He was no longer just a chef. He was the chef. The new symbol, the standard, the target. One evening, as the kitchen wound down after a long Friday night, Maria slid onto a stool beside him in the back office. "You okay?" she asked gently. Elijah leaned forward, elbows on knees, head in his hands. "They expect me to be perfect every single night. One mistake, one dry duck, and suddenly I'm just a fluke." Maria nudged him. "You've never been just anything. And you know what Grandma Georgia would have said?" He smiled. "Tired. Cook like you love 'em, even when they hate you." Exactly. A knock on the door interrupted them. It was Terrence, the new general manager. "Eli, you need to see this." He handed over a tablet. A video was trending online. A popular YouTube food reviewer had just posted a scathing video titled "The Brooks Hype, Overrated or Real?" The reviewer, a loud-mouthed influencer named Jasper Kent, had dined at Brooks and Roots 2 nights earlier alone under a fake name. "He's just repackaging soul food for the rich," Jasper said into the camera. "This ain't genius. It's gentrification with a garnish." The comments were split, some furious at the accusation, others agreeing. Maria's hands clenched. "You've got to be kidding me." Elijah, however, said nothing. 3 days later, Elijah invited Jasper to return publicly. He made the announcement on Instagram with a simple caption, "Come hungry. Let's talk." It went viral instantly. The food world watched, waiting. Jasper accepted. The night he arrived, reporters gathered outside. The kitchen ran tighter than ever. Elijah didn't just want to cook. He wanted to explain. Jasper sat at the chef's table, this time fully visible, camera crew in tow. Elijah approached with the first course personally. "Welcome back," he said, calm and steady. "Tonight, I'm not cooking for a critic. I'm cooking for someone who forgot where he came from." Jasper blinked. "Excuse me." Elijah leaned in. "You said I dressed soul food up to sell it to the rich. But soul food has always been elegant. Our grandmas turned scraps into celebration. I'm not gentrifying it. I'm restoring its respect." He placed a dish before him, fried green tomato tartar with remoulade foam and heirloom pepper jam. A hush fell over the restaurant. Jasper looked at the plate, then at Elijah. "I'll eat," he said, "but I'm not promising anything." Elijah gave a half smile. "I'm not asking for promises, just an open mouth and an open mind." Course after course rolled out. Jerk quail on jasmine rice risotto, smoked black-eyed peas with saffron broth, okra tempura with lemon aioli. By the time dessert arrived, sweet tea panna cotta with peach bourbon drizzle, Jasper's eyes were wide, his hands no longer filming but resting on the table. When the meal ended, Jasper stood. He turned to the cameras and simply said, "I was wrong." The next morning, his apology video racked up millions of views. "I came in expecting to hate Elijah Brooks. I left understanding he's telling a story. I'd forgotten our story. He's not gentrifying soul food. He's elevating it because it's always deserved elevation." He reminded me what food means. Public opinion swung hard. Even the critics who had hesitated now hailed Elijah as not just a chef, but a cultural ambassador. But as praise grew, so did the stakes. 1 week later, Elijah received a letter. He had been nominated for the Global Gastronomy Prize, an award never before won by an American chef under 40. But there was a catch. He'd be competing against Chef Laurent Roux, his former mentor turned quiet rival. The event would be televised, judged by international legends, and feature head-to-head challenges. Maria read the letter and muttered, "You know he'll do anything to win, right?" "I'm not afraid of him anymore," Elijah replied. "He taught me the knife, but my grandma taught me the reason to pick it up." The Global Gastronomy Finals were held in Kyoto, Japan. The event had 3 rounds: mystery ingredient, reinvention, and legacy. Round 1, shiso leaf, squid ink, and cocoa nibs. Laurent made a technical masterpiece: shiso seared scallops with cocoa glaze. Elijah made a daring dish: squid ink grits with shiso tempura and a cocoa chili reduction. Judge Maury declared, "Mr. Brooks's dish sang a new note." Round 2, reinvention. Take a dish from your childhood and transform it. Laurent served a reimagined coq au vin. Elegant, refined. Elijah cooked his grandma's oxtail stew again, but this time sous vide with smoked bone marrow foam over sweet potato gnocchi. Judge Aiko whispered to her peers, "It smells like home." Round 3, legacy. The challenge was to cook a dish that would outlive the chef. Elijah stared at the ingredients. He chose only 4: collard greens, cornmeal, smoked turkey, honey. He served a delicate collard wrap with cornmeal cake, glazed turkey medallion, and honey lavender sauce. His plating was minimalist, almost humble, but the taste, divine. Laurent's dish was complex, molecular, dazzling in appearance. The votes came in. A hush fell. Then the announcer's voice cut through. The 2025 Global Gastronomy Prize goes to Chef Elijah Brooks. Cameras flashed. Elijah stepped onto the stage, eyes brimming. "This isn't just for me," he said into the mic. "It's for every kid who watched their grandma turn scraps into feasts. Who was told they didn't belong in fine dining? We belong. We've always belonged." The crowd roared. When Elijah returned home, he found a letter waiting. No envelope, just a folded note on the counter of Brooks and Roots. It read, "She'd be proud of you. Eli, MC." Inside was an old photo: Elijah at 6, sitting on the kitchen floor, covered in flour, grinning up at his grandma. He sank into a chair, clutching it to his chest. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the restaurant windows. And inside, Elijah stood again behind the line. Not because he had to, because he wanted to, because every plate was still a chance to love people even if the world once laughed. They had laughed, but now they only tasted. And they remembered. Elijah Brooks was no longer the joke. He was the genius.